This founder believes the world of sports will experience many changes in the next 10 years. He believes that to protect the health and well-being of athletes, teams sanctioned on-field practice time will reduce by 15 to 20% by the year 2025. All the way from the best coast, Jason Robinson and Playbook 5. This founder believes traditional sports media publishers without live rights will be obsolete in a few years because athletes and entertainers will break their own news with journalists on their own social media once individual monetization becomes streamlined. Give it up for Tiffany, Kelly, and Cura Story. Thank you, founders, for those introductions. Let's kick it over to our head referee, Nick.
All right, welcome everybody. We are in the final four of the Sports Startup Debate Competition, and we are in the finals for all of these respective categories. So now we have the Sports Tech and Analytics versus the Athlete Performance and Wearables, and we have Tiffany and Jason, who have made it and beat out all their competition in their respective divisions. And now we're on to the final four. So welcome, founders. It's going to be a great debate. To get things started, we're going to do a coin flip to determine who will answer the first question. So Tiffany, would you like heads or tails?
This is literally my first time choosing. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to choose. Tails. Never fails.
All right. It is tails. So, would you like to receive the question or defer?
We're going to defer.
All right. So, Jason, you'll answer the first questions.
All right.
And remember, you'll get 45 seconds to answer uninterrupted. I'm going to have a hard stop, and then Tiffany will have her chance to respond, and the same rule applies, and then you can go back and forth. If we could put 10 minutes on the clock, best of luck to both of you. And here is the first question. How do you leverage equity when trying to acquire talent that you can't afford or to incentivize current employees?
Yeah, so equity is great, but ultimately it's only as valuable as the vision. 2.5% of zero is zero. So I think in order to leverage it the best way, you want to be able to articulate how that equity is going to grow over time, what you're going to be able to do to create the value of it, and ultimately get people bought into that vision as well. Through my experience, I've seen that when you can show them how that stock option grant is going to increase over time and what role they'll play in it, they're more likely to buy in and to play a role, and they'll take some ownership on seeing the company reach that value. But equity is...
All right, we'll tell you right there. And Tiffany, your response?
So equity pool is super important. I think about 10 to 20% of your shares should be kind of left over for your equity pool. Your first 15 to 20 employees should be getting equity. Of course, with like the cliff and all of the stipulations that you kind of put towards it. But honestly, like we've built our MVP, we've built it without paying anyone a dime yet. And so that really is kind of picking and having people that are passionate about the company and they kind of understand what we're building and the white space that we're kind of occupying with our product. So equity pool is 1,000% important, and investors actually make you have it. So I know that I put forth some equity towards technical, some equity towards non-technical, especially with the first 15 to 20 employees.
Right, and a follow-up question to that be, how would you evaluate or give a ratio to where you allocate your equity, whether it's business development or technical people on your team? How would you allocate that across the board?
Yeah, so for Cura Story, I think 0.5 to 2% goes to non-technical, and then about 2 to 5% goes to technical, just because of everyone is equally important, but just kind of the brain power and the actual, since we have a tech product, allocating a little bit more of that equity to the technical people on your team. That's kind of what we're doing at Cura Story.
All right, and Jason?
Yeah, I think that comes down to like really what they're going to be tasked with delivering once they come on board. How much of that is going to come from It's going to be new assignments and things that the original team that's set in place won't have to do. So it's tough for me to really put a number of value on that, because it's really not case by case, but it is. It's like, hey, what are you going to be doing? What is that worth? How big of a need is that? And then we associate the value to it at that point.
Great. So the next question, how do you look at possibly reskilling or replacing your initial workforce as your company scales? And Jason, we'll give you that question.
In the hiring process, it's important with both junior and senior hires to figure out if they're willing to mentor, because that's going to have a lot to do with who we hire in the future, if we can move people up from within or if we have to go outside. And at the end of the day, for me and the team, it's really about putting the best person in position to do the job. We feel like that if you are in a junior or senior role, you should have the ability to mentor, especially at a company like ours where the headcount is relatively low, and it likely will be as we continue to grow and scale. So we want people to be high utility players and being able to, yes, do their job, but also be able to groom people that we can keep within, because as everyone knows, onboarding and teaching people is a huge cost, both on time and resources.
Yeah, totally. I would lean closer towards reskilling than replacing. I know from a culture standpoint within startup world, if you are a startup that's kind of known to replace your employees and to kind of fire a lot of people, that horrible company culture. So especially, and also if you are kind of an early stage company, you really kind of need to have a pulse as a founder when you're hiring who's a generalist and who's a specialist, because kind of having an understanding on that, then it will help you kind of hedge against having to fire people in the future, and kind of moving towards reskilling as opposed to replacing. So for example, I consider myself a generalist data scientist. I can do kind of all things like data engineering, scraping, building models, and kind of putting them into production. But I kind of do lean towards kind of like building models and machine learning. And so having that understanding when you are hiring, okay, this might be a generalist UX designer, but they lean closer to research, right? So then once you do scale, you kind of help reskill and push them towards that specialty. That way you're kind of starting with generalists that can do everything, which you need to have that in the beginning when you have strapped for capital as a startup. But then once you're kind of scaling, people can kind of start going into these specialized roles.
All right, the next question would be, you brought in your first hire to focus on sales and business development. What steps are most important to ensure they will be successful?
Yes. So there are two things that are extremely critical with your first sales hire. One being the emails that they send out need to be educational. So your entire marketing funnel needs to be an educational marketing funnel. And two, say that you have hooked a lead and they're ready for a product demo. The product demo should be focused on how your platform saves time, makes the potential customer money, and how they're connecting with their target users. And so I'll give an example with Curatory for both of those. So we are a marketplace that connects athlete video topics to brands for sponsorship. Some of the educational email marketing that we do for athletes is we say, hey, mental health topics are trending during COVID. Go create a video about how you're dealing with this without sports, being trapped in the house. And on the flip side, we would email market brands like Calm, Headspace Talkspace saying, hey, athletes X, Y, and Z have created these videos. They're trending on social media. Come into our marketplace so you can actually sponsor them.
All right, well, before we go into more depth, we'll give Jason a shot here.
Yeah, so I think first of all, it's important for them to understand the customer's needs and the problem that we are solving as our product and service is coming into them. Also, they need to know every detail about the product, not just about where it's at, where we plan to take it, and also how we got to where we're at. They also need to be able to perform an awesome product demonstration. Obviously, product demonstrations for us are very critical, and we want our business and development and sales roles to be able to show the ease of use with the product in their demonstration. And lastly, but definitely not last priority, is there needs to be a prioritization of relationship building. Sales and business development is largely based on the relationship. So anybody that's coming in, I want to make sure that they have a plan in place that is putting that as a priority. And that's for both new and existing contacts. We want to make sure that we're establishing relationships early on and maintaining them.
All right, and to kind of dive deeper into that, so what are some of the training that you use for your business development? How long does that take, and what does that consist of, to kind of elaborate? And Tiffany, if you could follow up with that.
Yeah, I mean, so when I was kind of saying the product demo, like the training is really just making sure that those three things are being hit when you are kind of going through a sales product demo. So saving users time, our customers time. We show them immediately how they can filter videos in the marketplace to getting exactly what they want. Making them money, the first thing on our stats dashboard page is their return on content spend. So they're actually seeing, because we track videos, so seeing what they're getting a return on for the money that they're putting forth, which is making them money, and then connecting them to their target users as well, showing how the videos that they're sponsoring is connecting them to their target market. So I think for any company, hitting on those three, save time, make money, connect with users, are extremely important to kind of teach and develop your salespeople how to actually move through the product demo, and only kind of really focusing on those top three things, and of course answering other questions that the customer might have.
Jason, your response to that same follow-up?
So it's taken for us now roughly about 2 weeks. We try to focus on people who have existing experience in this industry, whether it be in selling sporting goods, selling other software solutions to high school coaches, selling into teams and organizations. So, we don't have to spend a ton of time teaching them the ins and outs of the industry and how to, deal with the cadence of sport. We really try to spend about 2 weeks on the product, like heavy. We give them a viewer, we give them an account, and first thing I do is say, just spend 4 days with it and don't even talk to me. Write down everything you feel like, write down everything you see. Let me know what you're experiencing. And from there, we'll take some feedback. And then for that second week of training, I'm going off what I learned in that first week to figure out the best way to prepare them to go out into the field.
Great. So that's all the time we have, and we're going to end it on one overtime question. There's not going to be any back and forth. It's just leaving on your highest statement in 30 to 45 seconds. So the final question would be, Twitter just announced that employees will be able to work from home forever if they want. Are you for or against the employee's choice to have full remote work environment? And is that actually possible for your business? So Jason, you'll have 30 to 45 seconds to answer that, and then Tiffany's.
For sure. So my co-founder, Paulette Trent, actually lives in the Bay Area. I'm here in LA, and we've been remote literally since we met and founded this company. So I'm a little bit more biased towards remote. However, I do feel like a hybrid of the two is best for smaller size teams, especially, to be able to, build rapport, learn more about one another, and reap the benefits of osmosis. So I don't know if it's real practical for us to think about a fully remote system as we continue to grow, but we'll definitely be building on our previous experience of having a remote team, having a lot of trust and over communicating and making sure we're getting our projects done.
Yeah, so I'm also biased towards remote work. One of the reasons why I became a data scientist was so I could build models wherever I wanted in the world. And I think half of our employees are actually remote, like outside of COVID, half of them are remote. I think as a company, in the beginning, startup, you need to be super lean. So I know the financials that we had going towards WeWork Labs are fully going towards other things in our financials now, and not getting office space. But I do think the osmosis, you can still kind of do that virtually, which a lot of technology has come out now because of COVID to be able to do that. So I definitely think a full remote work environment is totally accessible. It's just kind of putting the policies in place if you are a larger company to kind of hit the goals that you need to hit if you are remote.
Great. Well, Jason and Tiffany, great responses there, great debate. Now we're going to pass it over to the judges for their votes and analysis. If you haven't already, please donate to the CDP COVID-19 Relief Fund that we have on Pledge It, and use the hashtag debate for COVID to let us know that you're watching. Thank you. Now to the judges.
Now let's introduce our judges. First up, Brian Reilly, founder and managing partner at Will Ventures. Next, Rohn Malhotra, co-founder at Sports Tech X. And lastly, Kai Bond, partner at Courtside Ventures. Let's kick it over to our head referee, Nick.
All right, that wraps up an amazing debate between Tiffany and Jason for the Final Four in the sports tech and analytics versus the athlete performance and wearables. And now we're on to the judges for their analysis and picks. So to kick things off, we're going to send it over to Rohn for your analysis, followed by your pick.
All right, thanks, Nick. I'm going to start with going maybe question by question. I think on the first one, I think Tiffany kicked off really strong. I thought Jason played it a bit safe with his answer. I mean, I felt it was a bit generic. Tiffany seemed to bring really good examples with the points that she made about how she was talking about equity, what her vision for it was within the company. So I think that over there, she kind of took that one for me. For the second question as well, I felt that again, Tiffany had built a really good case. She brought in really good examples again from what they were doing at her company. She also mentioned the company a couple of times, and I thought Jason again lagged a bit behind. I felt he was still playing a bit safe for me. And though on the next question, I felt he came back in. So I felt that Tiffany kind of took an early lead, and Jason clawed his way back into the conversation. I think as he built up, he was able to establish his use case a bit better. But overall, I think there were three reasons that I was looking for. Number one was who could establish with clear examples how they were thinking and bring use cases from their actual business into the presentation. Number one. Number two, which answers were more clear, direct, and weren't like kind of on the fence-ish. And I think one person did that. And the third one, kind of a small one, but like, I think Tiffany also mentioned her company's name a couple of times, which I didn't even hear once from Jason. Kind of small thing, but when you have this platform and you're on the stage, every marketing plug is worth it. So yeah, I think overall for me, it has to go to Tiffany. I think Jason made some great points, but yeah, I think she took it overall.
Thank you for that, Rohn. So that is one vote for Tiffany. We need 2 out of 3 judges. So we're going to go over to Brian for his analysis and pick.
Awesome. So first off, Jason, Tiffany, I thought you both did a great job. So kudos to both of you, and kudos to you for betting on yourselves and taking the risk. I know it's not easy, so congrats on all the progress to date. So I also scored this by round, so we can go through each. So in round 1, I went with Jason. And I think Tiffany, she had a really clear grasp on the mechanics of granting equity, how to leverage it. But ultimately, I liked what Jason emphasized. So as a founder, you need to be able to sell a vision not only to your investors, but to your employees. And one of the founders and CEOs' biggest role is hiring, right? And to those that can sell a great vision are ultimately the ones that can attract the best talent. So ultimately, the better you can sell that vision, the more money a potential hire is going to attribute to that equity grant. So I liked what he emphasized there. And I also liked what Jason had to say about allocating equity across various roles. Obviously, there's market precedent for everything, and there's market precedent for every role. But it's not always so black and white. And I think it's really helpful to consider first market precedent, but you need to stay flexible and fine-tune each employee's package based on their experience and responsibilities. So I like that Jason made note of that. As far as round 2, though, I did have Tiffany. I think Tiffany made some great points regarding culture. Your reputation is critical to your ability to hire as a new startup. And having high turnover is definitely a poor way of maintaining a strong reputation. I also did like what Tiffany had to say about generalists versus specialists. As a startup, it's critical to balance both. In order to stay lean and efficient with capital, you need generalists early on that can work cross-functionally and contribute in multiple areas. You want people that have, a real core strength, like go-to-market strategy, but can own a few different roles at the outset. And more typically, you'll tend to increase your specialist hires as you mature as a company. So I thought Tiffany really, showed clear thought process there. And in round 3, I went back to Jason. So, I thought His point on process around establishing and maintaining relationships, I think that's one of the most important things a young startup can do. As an early team, it's really critical to get out there and network your butt off. And knowing the right people and the right strategic partners, that can greatly accelerate your distribution and help you achieve some real business model leverage. And I think focusing, when it comes to hiring, I think focusing on work experience when you hire, it's critical. I'm actually, going back to my last comment, I think this ties into what Tiffany said regarding generalist versus specialist. To start, your management team, typically your CEO is your sales lead, and this is out of necessity. But as you help, as you build a team, and you get to the point where you can hire a real salesperson, experience in the role and in the industry is critical. So as a young startup, first building out a sales function, you really want someone with that experience. And this will keep the management team from having to burn too much time getting someone up to speed. In addition to saving time from a training perspective, you'll reap the benefits of having that broadened network that comes from an experienced sales professional. And lastly, on the overtime round, I also went with Jason. And I think the easy comment is, obviously, I think we're all sort of biased towards a remote culture given the current climate. But I do think in an ideal world, hybrid's best. And some of this comes down to personal preference. But I do agree with Jason that in-person is the best way to build rapport and a strong culture. And I think setting that foundation is critical to any startup. And I think it's just easiest to do that in person. So ultimately, I think both did an exceptional job, but I have to lean towards Jason on this one.
Great, thank you for that, Brian. So now we are in a tiebreaker. 1 vote Tiffany, 1 vote Jason. And now, Kai, you are in the hot seat to decide who will go to the championship round. So could you please provide your analysis followed by your pick?
Sure. It was a fascinating battle. Had a lot of fun listening to the back and forth. One of the points that I found in the first round that was particularly interesting is this idea of equity tied to passion. And I think, I back first-time founders as a venture capitalist. And it's hard to make a hire where you don't have a seasoned professional. I thought Tiffany made some really interesting points around this area as well. So, I thought it was fascinating kind of going through that. On the topic of sort of culture and building a remote culture, right? This is a fascinating one to me. As a founder, I always said, everybody's got to be in the same room. Like, I need you here. We need to argue it out. I need to see where that pixel is and that passion. I agree. It's very hard to recreate, but when you see something like a GitHub, right? That's built 100% remote from the workforce. I just find that, maybe I'm old and some of this is ageist against myself. But, the more that I've seen individuals thrive on independence, intellectual curiosity, again, tying that kind of remote culture back to a passion. For me, when it all came down to how it was viewed, I thought that Tiffany, won the battle.
Great, thank you for that, Kai. So, Tiffany, congratulations. That's 2 out of the 3 votes. Congratulations, you are on to the championship for the Sports Startup Debate Competition.
On to the championship round, going down this Thursday night at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with judges David Meltzer, Wayne Kimmel, and Marquise Colston, who will decide which founder goes home with the belt. Remember, our Debate for COVID initiative. We're still trying to get to that $10,000 goal. We'll see you in a couple days. Have a great evening.